This was not how I wanted my India trip to go. All right, my friends, welcome. Hello from India. I'm in Kochi, which is southern India. First time coming out here. And time for another AMA. I have asked you guys on YouTube community post as well as on Instagram. You guys have a lot of really great questions. A lot of them are actually focusing on my ethnicity. So I'll just start with that, which is that yes, I am Indian. I am full Punjabi. In the past, when people have asked, I've given kind of a flippant answer, which is to say that I'm like half Antarctican, half Indian, or Antarctican and whatever else. And the reason I did that is because I received some advice that details like that can generally just be used against you. They're not going to benefit you. And once you disclose that information, you can never undo it. At a certain point, I was like, dude, it doesn't really matter. Who cares? But I see why those people were giving me that advice, because I know for myself and those people who were giving that advice, South Asian, East Asian, you still experience discrimination in the US. And even if you go to certain comments on my YouTube channel from years ago when I had this like free speech policy, which was silly to say that you can say anything on the channel, and I wasn't gonna remove comments, but now we don't do that at all. We ban people if they're being idiotic. So anyways, that's why I was a little bit more secretive about it. And then I was having this conversation with Nikhil from Captain Sinbad. And I remember how he was telling me how he loved like Just Rain and some of these like Punjabi influencers. And Punjabi culture in India is generally viewed in a positive light. And he wears a kara, which is the bracelet that Sikhs wear. And I was raised Sikh, or Sikh is what they say in the US to kind of differentiate that from the word of like being ill, right? But it's S-I-K-H. I don't wear a turban. I'm not super traditional, and I'm not really religious now, but I was raised Sikh, and wear a kara, and you know, there's like these 5Ks, and like there's a lot to the religion. But I remember Nikhil telling me that he loves Punjab and he wears a kara because he respects Punjab, and it almost felt like he wanted to be Punjabi, right? And I was like, this is so ironic that the Indian guy who's not Punjabi rocks the stuff as if he was Punjabi, and the guy who is Punjabi keeps it anonymous. And ever since then, I just kind of was like, this is something that I'll have to address at some point. So this is me addressing it. So yes, I'm full Punjabi. And the reason I came to India is because I've been here 5 times before this trip. This is my 6th, maybe this is my 5th time in India. I think this is my 5th time in India. And the last 4 times from when I was a toddler until 2012, so last time I came here was 10 years ago, it was to see family. Never got to see the touristy sites that I wanted to see. Taj Mahal, Golden Temple, those were the 2 main ones. Golden Temple is like the main holy site for Sikhs, or Sikhs, and Taj Mahal is Taj Mahal, one of the seven wonders of the world, right? So it really just came because pre-pandemic, I made this goal to have a family trip at least once a year. And during the pandemic, my mom and brother were a little bit more risk averse than I was, and they didn't want to travel anywhere. So this is the first big trip we're doing since pandemic, and my brother didn't want to go. So just me and my mom and those 2 main sites, right? So I've already seen the Golden Temple and I'm seeing Taj Mahal in 2 days. And I'll tell you more about the Golden Temple later in the video, but unreal experience, amazing. Cannot recommend it enough. Oh yeah, some other comments talking about how, you know, I'm finally getting in touch with my roots. Bro, I was on the Bangla team at UCLA for 4 years. So I've always been somewhat in touch with my roots, and I love Indian food and culture. I don't speak very good Hindi Punjabi. I can understand it. And dude, I love Alex Joseph's comment. Everyone's surprised he's Indian when, 1, he's a YouTube/entrepreneur whose content focuses on medicine. His mom on here giving roti recipes and always drinking tea. True, I'm in Kochi right now, and there's this town, I think Munnar, that is known for these massive tea plantations, really great tea, but it's 4-hour drive, and just not gonna be able to make it work time-wise, which is unfortunate. I would have loved to go there. He literally hits so many of the signs. The only reason he isn't a typical Indian uncle is his age. Love that comment. And sorry to all the commenters who were asking about a meet and greet in India. Don't really have time for that. Really just prioritizing time with my mom. Haven't had quality time like this with her since 2019. So a bit more about India. We're gonna sprinkle some India throughout this AMA, but the cities I'm visiting started off in Delhi for a few nights, adjust to the new time zone. Then we went to Amritsar for 2 nights, saw Golden Temple and surrounding areas, Jallianwala Bagh, like this, all the sites to see in Amritsar we did. Then Goa for 4 nights. Goa was pretty amazing. My mom loved that. She's always wanted to go to Goa since she was a little girl. First time for her. Now we're in Kochi. My mom lived here when she was younger for a few years. and really cool spot. Then we go to Agra for a night to see Taj Mahal, both at night and during sunrise. Want to see it twice. And finish off in Delhi for another 1 or 2 nights just to finish up any shopping and then fly back home. So it's about a 2-week trip. So Mohammed Surais says, can you give advice on credit cards as a med student and beyond? I got into credit card churning when I was I think a 3rd year in med school. And I used the churning, getting the points, to help fund all of my travel for residency interviews. And I found doctorofcredit.com and the churning subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/churning, to be very helpful, but you can't expect anyone to really spoon feed you. You have to be a little bit more self-directed with your learning. But I do think now there are many more resources on YouTube that can help you get started, but the more advanced tactics still tend to be on these forums and discussion groups. The main things I would say would be, number 1, be very, very organized. I have a spreadsheet, which I think I linked in a previous video on credit card churning, on how to keep track of all your cards and the annual fee and the dates, and is it personal or business, and a lot of the different factors. You can see that there, which will be a good starting point. The extroverted introvert life. Any tips for successful dating in med school or in general? I'd say that the first thing that comes up is become the kind of person that you want to date. So if you want to be with someone who is adventurous and really, super fit and funny and outgoing, then become those things because you're more likely to attract that person. I think working on yourself is one of the most powerful ways to improve your dating life, because the other things, the confidence, etc., those are downstream effects that follow. But if you focus on getting in better shape, on improving your posture, public speaking, doing hard things, and building true self-confidence, not the fake it till you make it, but actually doing the hard work and then seeing the results of what you can achieve and accomplish, which is more than what you think right now, those things will translate into having a more interesting life, being a more interesting person, being more confident, sexy, attractive, etc. Humaid S. What is the key to happiness and contentment, especially in medicine, in your late 20s and 30s? That's a deep question that I don't have the answer to, but I can just share some of my thoughts. Understanding what game you're playing is going to set your expectations as to what is reasonable, what is success. Because I think a lot of people now with social media will look at people who have some nice house, nice car, etc., and in their early 20s, they'll focus on that. But it's better to not focus on trying to get the shortcut to go from here to owning whatever cars or being the kind of person, whatever physique, whatever superficial things we look at, and instead focus on the process and the pathway of getting there. So in my 20s, I was like, I want to work my ass off and build these things because I have this desire to achieve certain levels of success. I want to achieve certain levels of personal growth. It's not just the superficial, car, house, whatever it is. It's about being the kind of person that can do those things. It's about being the kind of person that I would admire if I was younger. And I think people don't focus on that enough. And working hard towards that in your 20s is the best time to do it, because you're just formulating your self-identity and you have so much energy and just power and drive that is going to start waning a bit when you hit your 30s. I can definitely not grind as hard now as I could back in my 20s. Dr. Ashik Pramchand. What are your top 5 travel destinations currently, Doc? I feel like we're getting a lot of questions from my fellow brown brethren. Cape Town, Bermuda, Hawaii. I'm looking forward to Japan later this year. I haven't been there yet, but I'm very much looking forward to that. That'll probably make the list. And Bern, Switzerland. All right, so a few people have commented on these ugly shoes that I'm wearing. I've been having some right knee pain, right hip pain, right shoulder pain, and my physical therapist just says that the whole right side of my body just kind of out of whack, out of alignment, and I need to focus on certain movement patterns and strengthening, etc., proprioception. I've been doing a lot to improve my foot health because everything's all tied together. These toe shoes by Vibrams, they're super ugly, and I remember back in college, like 2010, I think that's when they were first getting popular, and I thought they were the most ridiculous, ugly, silly thing ever. Now fast forward 10 years and I'm the one who's using them very frequently, almost daily. Kind of late on the bandwagon, but it has been helping, and I do feel my foot getting stronger with this combined with all the other exercises. And that leads into another point, which is I think not enough people are willing to change their mind on things. And this is something I don't know how you teach, because there is a certain level of natural openness to someone just based on their personality. But I know that you can teach it, I just don't know how. Because for me, as soon as I remember middle school and high school, when you're talking about things like abortion and these hot topics, I always wanted to understand both sides, and I wanted to get clarity versus just like digging my feet into the ground and saying, this is the right way. And I think for a lot of people, it's more instinctual and natural to dig your feet in and say, no, this is the right way, and if you don't agree, you're wrong. What I think is a really important metric to reflect on is, do you follow people online, or do you follow sources of news or media, whatever kind of thing you consume, where you disagree on certain things? I mentioned Jordan Peterson or Sam Harris or someone in a previous video. Those two clearly disagree on many things, but they have a lot of overlap too. But I think both are very intelligent. And I remember the commenter was like, oh, don't tell me you listen to Jordan Peterson, or ew. Like, I was like, wow, this person just doesn't get it. You should never find any person online where you agree with every single thing they say, unless they've only talked about a couple things. So are there things with Jordan Peterson that I do agree with? Yes. Things I disagree with? Yes. Sam Harris? Same thing. With most things in life, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And it's not a matter of just blindly believing one way of thinking, but understanding things. Trying to find the truth means you have to get messy and go into the nuance. You can't just have clear black and white. Uram Zugalk Panda, what is your current goal? Personal goals would be really optimizing fitness this year. So I've already spent a lot more time and energy with both strength training and cardio last year. By now, doubling down on both of those, but also adding stability and rehab stuff, because essentially last year I had some issues with my knee or my hip or my shoulder that didn't allow me to continue exercising at the same intensity. So I think to get around that and to be able to continue to push hard on those various forms of exercise I want to do, I need to address whatever movement pattern deficits I'm having on the right side of my body. And then on the professional side, we have a lot of huge things happening with Med School Insider, some big projects we've been working on for a few years that are finally reaching fruition, finally getting launched, which is exciting. It's a huge relief. It's a huge culmination of a lot of hard work from not only myself, but many people on the team. So a couple different big projects, and investing pretty heavily in Med School Insiders this year. And with Jabal and Cars, gonna keep having a lot of fun driving amazing cars. And with this channel, I'm having a lot of fun with experimenting with different health gadgets. One thing that happened on this trip actually is, thanks to Levels, I use a CGM, and you can see in this video and on many other videos where I talk about a CGM, you can find my link for Levels if you want to use that. You'll get a discount on your annual subscription. Essentially, I started a new statin because my lipids aren't in target range, and that statin is stronger. Statins do sometimes cause insulin resistance to varying degrees in people. And as soon as I started it, within about less than a week, a few days, my average blood sugar was way higher. And I only knew that because of this. I didn't actually feel much different. And maybe I felt a little bit off, but it was a stressful time. We were doing a lot of different things professionally. And after being on the statin for 2 weeks, I was like, okay, this elevated blood sugar is not stress, because sure, I was stressed for these couple days, but my stress is reduced. Then I was traveling. I was like, well, now I'm here in India, the body's under a different kind of stress, sleep deprivation with jet lag, and it still was really high, super high. My average blood sugar before was, let's say, high 80s to 90s, and now my average blood sugar was 110s, way higher. So I discontinued the statin about a week ago, and just a couple days ago, now I'm back to normal where my average is below 100, which I just really love experimenting with my health and optimizing these things. It's very interesting to me, it's very fun. So you'll be seeing more of those videos on this channel. And the other thing I want to mention there is that a lot of people poo-poo non-diabetics using a CGM because they say, where's the evidence for X, Y, and Z? And this is such a salient example where if I didn't have a CGM, I wouldn't be aware of this insulin resistance. And maybe in 6 months or a year when we check my hemoglobin A1C again, which by the way, a lot of people at my age are not even checking their A1C, then we may notice that, okay, wow, why has the A1C gone up? And then we'd say, okay, maybe it's the statin. So having this tight feedback loop, I love these pieces of technology that prove their worth in ways like this. Peach316, how do you stay inspired, motivated on days where you feel like literally doing nothing? I think what it comes down to is understanding that you don't need motivation to do stuff. You can also do stuff and then feel motivated. So there are many days where I don't want to do a certain type of exercise, like maybe I'm scheduled, because I time block on my calendar. So maybe I've scheduled for myself to do cardio at Tuesday, 7 a.m. Tuesday, 7 a.m. comes around and I'm like, hell no, I don't want to do this. But I know that if I just put on the clothes, get on the bike, and start within 5 minutes, I'm gonna feel great about it. So the biggest thing for me is just learning that taking the action and letting the motivation follow is a surefire way to get around that issue. Ali Lahib, should undergrad students travel or wait until school is done? If you have the opportunity to and the means to, then I think it's a great opportunity. And why India? I have wanted to see the touristy things for so many years, and my mom's getting older and I want to do these trips together. Also haven't done a proper overseas international trip since COVID. I've done Canada, Mexico, which is not overseas. So it's been great though, it's been great. Your success achieved. Best toe shoes that look good or at least decent? I don't know, man. I think once you go toe shoes, aesthetics is kind of out the window. Dylan Rogers, going back to the credit card churning, when can you complete your credit card churning series? I think that there are other YouTubers that are just more specialized in this, and I think they can probably provide better value than I can. I have a system for myself that works with my use case and my businesses, so I'm just probably not the best person to introduce someone to churning. There's other YouTubers that are great out there. Matt K9, when you get gassy on a plane, do you just straight gas the person next to you or do you reverse fart? Yes. Are you part Indian? So Jubal is actually the name of a town in North India. I think it was part of Punjab before the partition, when Punjab got shrunk quite a bit. But Jubal is the name of this town, and there's even a Jubal Palace over there. So I'd love to see that at some point. Protein Shake 01, how do you manage leg strain on planes as a tall person? I did a lot of international travel right before residency. I went to Cape Town in Germany, and I was on economy, so I just had to get up and walk. And I would take my Kindle and just go to the back of the plane and like do squats and try not to be in the way of the flight attendants. But I found that as a way to relieve the blood pooling in your lower extremities and like the achiness and the back pain and whatever. So doing some stretches, doing some squats. This was actually the first time I ever flew business class on an international trip. Again, thanks to credit card churning and points. And that was an awesome experience. It's gonna be hard to go back to economy. Indian traits or values that you still follow to this day. There's a lot of stuff that I really respect about Sikhism, and going to the Golden Temple and learning from the history. So I actually pushed to get a guide in Amritsar because my mom was like, oh, I've been to Amritsar before. Like, we just need to see some things. We don't need to guide. It's like, no. I've traveled enough to know that if you really care about a place and I really care about getting the most out of the Golden Temple experience, you got to have a guide because they just know way more than you do because they live here. They study the history, et cetera, et cetera. And we got this guide, and within 5 minutes, my mom and I, we look at each other and we're like, yeah, good effing call. Good effing call. But the thing I love about Sikhism in particular is how progressive and how focused on equality it is. So it's a newer religion. I think it came around in the 50s. Like the gurus who essentially founded it were alive from the 1500s to, I think the last one died around 1706. So it was like 150, 130 years, something like that. And I mean, they were anti-caste system. A lot of people know about the caste system in India. They're all about equality. They said there is no Hindu, there is no Muslim, right? The first guru, they're like, what do you mean there's no Hindu, no Muslim? Those were the two main religions at the time. And he says there's just one, we're all the same. And his two closest disciples that essentially were like his two right-hand men, one was Muslim, one was Hindu. They were also all about equality for women. Like, it was such a progressive religion, and they don't force it on other people. And if you look at most other religions, major religions in the world, part of the teaching is that you need to convert others, and that's not part of Sikhism, which again, I love that. But reading that book, Sapiens, he talks about how previously, hundreds or thousands of years ago, there were thousands upon thousands of religions because they were very local. And it's only a more modern thing where these religions took over because a fundamental teaching was to spread it to others, right? Versus just letting people have their own localized religion. So there are a lot of things I respect about India, and I love some of those aspects, but there's also a lot of stuff I don't like, and I'm so grateful that my parents came here, because if I was born and raised here, my life would look completely different, obviously, and the opportunities I have in the US are just, that's why both on this channel and on Jabal and Cars, where I'm a little bit more unfiltered, I kind of talk a lot about how there are so many people who are so insanely privileged and are just so out of touch. I think that I'm very lucky to be born in the US and to have a loving mother. Like, those two are massive advantages that not everyone has. A lot of people don't have that. I can think of a few examples in my life, people in my circles who, it's sometimes just shocking how out of touch people can be. And it's important that you are intentional with crafting your own story, because reality isn't what you think it is. Reality is very much fluid. in that you can tell a story to yourself that you are a massive victim. And I know some people who come, or like trust fund babies, who are insane victims. And I know people who come from far less who are empowered and don't feel as much as victims, even though they have far less to be grateful for. So user SD3, you do a lot of content on monitoring your blood glucose levels as an early 20s male in a family where everyone has type 2 diabetes. How do I fight the feeling of it feeling pointless if I'm eventually going to get type 2 diabetes anyways? I actually see that as the complete opposite, which is that you are at higher risk, possibly, but because of that, monitoring your blood sugar levels allows you to mitigate that risk, because the idea being it's these insults over time and building worse and worse metabolic health with time, not doing enough exercise, eating the wrong things, your stress, your sleep, etc., which you can visualize with a CGM. I mean, I have, not everyone in my family, but I have a strong family history of metabolic disorder as well, and it empowers me. It makes me feel even more, it makes me feel like my efforts are making a bigger change than they otherwise would. Caitlin Springer, are your dreams different when you're traveling versus at home? I actually haven't, I don't remember my dreams that often. I tend to remember them mostly at home, maybe like 5% of the time, you know, 1 or 2 per month kind of thing. Another one from Caitlin, what home comfort do you miss the most when you travel? I was just reflecting on this 2 days ago because I was getting completely demolished by mosquitoes. I've always had issues where mosquitoes just love me versus other people. So as soon as we came to Goa, I was getting demolished by mosquitoes. And I was like, dude, I miss not having to worry about mosquitoes, and I miss my bidet because I have a Toto super toilet, heated seat, and like blow dryer, and my Toto is awesome, and my mattress. My toilet and my mattress are the 2 things I miss. One other thing that occurred to me is that our expectations really influence our moods. In America, if you have people being rude or they're blasting their phone, like I get very annoyed because it's so inconsiderate and so like, how do you think this is okay? When people are sitting on a plane before taking off, or even in the air, and they're playing videos on their phone full volume. It's like, dude, are you that unaware and inconsiderate? But in India, for whatever reason, maybe because education is lower here, you have different expectations. There's much more patience that I experience myself towards others, and those things don't bother me as much. I'm now just gonna riff on a few things that have happened in India. Jet lag, back in the day, whenever I would come to India, I would literally just stay up until the point I needed to go to sleep, and then I'd fall asleep and wake up essentially at a reasonable hour, and boom, jet lag cured. And now that I'm in my 30s, I don't think that it's as easy for me to stay asleep. So when I first got here, I kept waking up at 4 a.m. no matter how late I slept. And that took about 3 or 4 days. So I'm not trying to be Jocko Willink when I'm on vacation. I want to be able to sleep in until at least at 6. If not later. But now I realize I need to sleep earlier, because if I'm going to keep waking up at 4 a.m., I can't sleep at midnight and expect myself to sleep in until 7. I'll have to sleep at 9 knowing that I'm going to wake up at 4. So it's like the wake up time is now fixed, and the time I fall asleep I need to be more conservative there. Another interesting thing I've been grappling with over the last several years is using money as a tool to buy time and convenience. So there have been a few instances on the trip where I will take the financial hit, which is like not very much here, just to buy convenience. So I had a flight that was gonna arrive here in Kochi 2 hours earlier, but it required like 5 hours of travel and a layover. And the airport was further away in Goa. And then I said, you know what, let me just pay the $70, $100 cancellation fees, and then get this other flight that's gonna be direct. It's only 1 hour flight, so our total travel time is gonna be 2.5 hours. It's probably gonna be more comfortable. Same thing with taxis too. So rather than trying to find the cheapest taxi, what's the best rate? Am I gonna save $2 here, $2 there? It's like, you know what? What's the most convenient? Okay, let me go to the hotel. Yes, I'm overpaying by 50%, but the convenience factor is just worth it. One thing I wanted to touch on is the power of truth and what you believe. So I was listening to a podcast where one of the guests was saying that rather than deciding whether or not it's worth to believe something, like there are certain things that are literally false but figuratively true, like assuming that a gun is always loaded. And there's a reason why we do that, why we believe and act as if it is always loaded, even though it may not be, right, for safety reasons. And he said it doesn't really matter. You should actually only pursue the real truth. And what I would argue is that finding the real truth for certain things is very difficult, and there's a level of subjectivity to it. So as an example, the stories you tell yourself. When I got sick with IBD, the truth was I was a healthy adolescent, and at 18 years old, I get this acute illness, and then I'm now less healthy. And I have fewer opportunities, And like, there's a lot of negative things that are just facts. Like, I can't do certain things that I could do before. I can't eat certain foods. I have to sleep more because my body is inflamed and recovering. I lose a lot of weight, yada, 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 yada. So if I'm trying to find the truth there, it's probably a losing proposition. But if I instead tell myself a story, which may not be focused on truth seeking, but rather than value adding, then I can tell myself a story whereby I derive power, utility, and positives from a very, very negative situation. It's called sublimation, right? Taking the negativity and transforming it into something more powerful and positive to then propel you forward. And that was a big reason why I had so much drive and focus and intense work ethic during that time of my life, of my early to mid 20s. And going back to that earlier conversation about finding people who you don't necessarily agree with on everything, you shouldn't agree with anyone on everything. There was some quote from Socrates about like true wisdom is, I'm gonna totally butcher this, something along the lines of being able to entertain an idea without being convinced or believing it. And that's an important point. You can look at ideas, look at these different concepts, play with them in your head and try to understand them without identifying with them, without believing them. Try to see the argument of the other side and really try to put yourself in their shoes and see their perspective. Try to believe the things they believe. Don't get convinced by it, make your own decision, but only do that once you've done that for both sides. And I try to find people online to follow who I think exemplify this, where they can play with difficult ideas and maybe they don't always know the answer. They're like, you know what? I'm not sure I feel this way about it, but I'm also conflicted on this thing and I don't have a clear answer, and that's okay. And then the final two thoughts, this is very random and now no longer an AMA, but more just me sharing my random thoughts and reflections while traveling, because I do tend to be more reflective when traveling. I think many people are. By the, buffets and food in India, oh my God, it smacks so hard. In the US, I hate buffet breakfasts because at hotels, because scrambled eggs, sausage, bacon, potatoes, not very healthy, not very tasty. And here in India, every hotel we've been to that has a buffet, it's like phenomenal. They still have the omelet station, but they have the dosa station, they have the paratha station, they have a lot of other things going on. It's such a joy having breakfast here. Normally I don't even enjoy breakfast, but the breakfast here smack hella hard. The last thing I'm considering today, this came up in a conversation with my mom yesterday, is credentials are important to establish someone's background and kind of foundation, but beyond that, it tells you kind of the floor, but it doesn't tell you the ceiling. I'm still kind of hashing this out, so bear with me. My mom is seeing a doctor, and I don't think that doctor is managing her cholesterol, her overall health, her preventive medicine very well. Things like high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, like metabolic health. She's pre-diabetic. And I think my mom always wants to work with an Indian doctor. And I think the culture here, from what I've heard, I don't want to be offensive with this, because this is going to be taken the wrong way. What I've heard is that this is a little bit more old school and traditional in the sense that the doctor is always right. The doctor learned things in med school and they shouldn't be questioned, and that's the way things are. That's what I hear about medicine in India, and maybe things have changed, but this is what I've heard several years ago from some family members who worked with a lot of Indian doctors. And in the US, I think there's a lot more skepticism. There's a lot more like, hey, we don't know a lot of things in medicine. We're constantly changing our mind. They say that 50% of what you learn in med school is going to be wrong. The hard part is that you just don't know which 50%. And I think credentials are important, but are not everything. And people sometimes focus too much on that. So, Peter Attia, one of my favorite doctors, he is not board certified in anything. He did 3 years of general surgery residency, dropped out, but he is one of the world's leading experts as a longevity specialist, or however you want to categorize him. And based on his credentials, not being board certified, he has his MD, but he doesn't have the other things you would think that would make for a longevity specialist. He still kicks ass because he's self-taught, self-directed, and has the foundation of the MD, but then builds upon that. And similarly, even if I had finished my plastic surgery residency, I would have so many gaps in my knowledge for things that I'm interested in today. Things like longevity, things like cardiovascular disease, right? By the way, one of the most terrifying things that's happened to me in a long time, I can't remember the last time I felt this way. This was not how I wanted my India trip to go. We were on a bike ride, an e-bike tour, a couple days ago, and my mom was having a little bit of abdominal discomfort. long story short, we're sitting on this ledge, and she then sits down, leans against me. She's like, "Oh, I don't feel so good. My stomach is quite bloated. I think I have some food poisoning." And then all of a sudden, she passes out. So there were certain factors that pointed to seizure, certain things that pointed to just vasovagal syncope. And I wasn't sure what, like, it was scary because we're on this e-bike tour in the middle of nowhere. We're on this island, super rural, and there's not even any cars around. We got there on an e-bike, we took a ferry. I was like, oh my God, I felt incredibly stressed and concerned for my mom's health. And I remember thinking like, dude, why did I choose plastics? Like, obviously I didn't finish my residency, but even in the last year of med school, you really start focusing on educating yourself in that one specialty. And then, with your intern year too. Because I did an emergency medicine rotation in residency, but I'm not focusing on EM stuff. I'm focusing on, okay, how can I apply this to plastics? Okay, cool, give me all the lacerations you guys have, and I'm gonna handle all the lacerations. I'll be the lac guy. And I was like, dude, why couldn't I have chosen a better specialty like EM instead? And it was terrifying because we're just isolated without any resources, and I was really concerned for my mom's health. She loses consciousness, and then when she awakes, is she post-ictal? She's really lethargic and kind of confused, or is she just like what's going on? And it was a whole ordeal. Hours later, I finally get her, we had to transfer hotels, and getting her from the island to getting her to a toilet that's not just a hole in the ground, because this was, again, a rural area, to then getting to the pharmacy and getting some meds, to then picking up our bags from the first hotel, going to the second hotel. It was just hella stressful, and it made me realize how much I care about my mom and how fragile health is. Not how I wanted the trip to go, but luckily she's okay, everything's fine, she's recovering, still having a few GI issues, but a lot milder now. It's also kind of confusing because she has lived in India for 20 something years, and when she comes to India, she never really gets food poisoning. This time she did. We're eating essentially the same thing. I have IBD, I have a very sensitive stomach. But anyways, it was incredibly stressful, and my mom has called me a drill sergeant in the past because I tend to be very intense about her following certain things and taking care of her health. And now I think me and my brother are gonna be a little bit more, maybe even more of drill sergeants. And I say that jokingly, it's in a loving way, and it's because we really care about her health, and we just wanna help her do the things that she does wanna do, but she may not have the, as much knowledge or motivation or discipline to follow through on certain things, and we just want to help with that. But the reason I brought this up was the idea of credentials. And I think it's hard to find good doctors anywhere. It took me a while to find my current doctor, who is much more open to speaking to me as a colleague and running certain tests and running through the differential and the hypothesis. We can work through things together versus someone saying, no, this is what's recommended by the AHA, and this is what we're gonna do. So I still need to hash this idea out more. What is the value of credentials? Where do credentials fall short? Because I think they do fall short in a lot of ways. But I also think they're very important because they help you cut through the noise when people are saying nonsense and they have no idea what they're talking about because they have no medical background. I'm just giving the example of medicine, but of course, credentials apply to other domains of life too. Tips when you're traveling to India, things that I found helpful. So first, when it comes to the actual traveling light, I never like to check in bags. So I have a backpack that's full of electronics, this camera, computer, cables, etc. And a few items I may just need on short notice, things like sunscreen, etc. And then a carry-on. And to have 2 weeks worth of clothes for both cold and warm climates, because this trip in India, I'm going to places where it's 30 degrees and places where it's 90 degrees. I got a lot of merino wool. You can wear that many times without it smelling. And I do laundry once. So I get 8 pairs of boxers and socks. I don't like re-wearing those. And I wear them once and wash them after, halfway through, after a week. And then the shirts, I only bring 3 shirts, 3 short sleeve, 3 long sleeve. I just keep wearing those. In the cold climates, I'll cycle through the long sleeve. In the warmer climates, I'll cycle through the short sleeve and just hang them and air dry them after you wear them, before you wear them the next day. But ideally, you just rotate between different ones so they're not getting worn back-to-back days. As for gut health, so I got sick in 2012 when I came here because I ate a salad from my grandma's garden. Don't want to have any raw vegetables, any raw foods. Obviously, you're having bottled water. That was the first time I traveled internationally. Well, I shouldn't say that. First time I came to India, let's say, since getting IBD, because I got IBD in 2009. So I was very concerned about my gut health. But I was staying at my family's home. So they were cooking and they could accommodate my needs. What I found is that it's very challenging when this trip we're just staying in hotels and eating at restaurants. Very challenging to get non-spicy food. I used to love spicy food as a kid, and ever since getting IBD, I just can't handle it for obvious reasons. The thing with spicy food is that if you're gonna have chicken dishes, having those that are marinated in yogurt-based marinades tend to not be spicy, or at least they're better able to make those non-spicy versus things like chicken tikka, chicken curry. So took a couple days to figure that out. And the first couple days were a little bit rough for that reason, because I was just having most of the foods where they say, oh yeah, it's not spicy, it's not spicy. It was still spicy because their tolerance is just so high that when they don't think a food is spicy, to me it's still spicy. So I had to be very explicit. No, don't have any of these 5 ingredients in it because I will deem it as spicy. And then the final thing for gut health is actually probiotics and trying to maintain a happy gut microbiome. I was on Visbiome, which is a very powerful probiotic that has demonstrated some clinical efficacy for those with IBD to maintain remission, but they raised the prices a few times within the last year, and I was like, well, let me try some other options out there. So I went to Walmart and I got some probiotics there. I'm trying out this other one, I'm forgetting the company's name, experimenting with that. And also I've been using Pendulum's Metabolic Daily and Acromantia for a while now. So these 3 probiotics, it's not just mega dosing it at the morning before you eat. You generally don't want to have it with food because the acids in your stomach are secreted when you eat, and those are going to kill a lot of the bacteria. So some best practices would be, number 1, refrigerate probiotics. So anytime I go to the hotel, first thing I do is I put my probiotics in the fridge, and it's fine that when you're traveling between places for a few hours or a day, it's not refrigerated, but you're going to have better efficacy by putting them in the fridge. Second thing is have it multiple times per day. So I'll have my probiotics morning and night, sometimes even a third time in the middle of the day. And I also have foods that are fermented or have probiotics themselves, things like yogurt. So I'm having a lot of yogurt, not necessarily milk, but frequent servings of yogurt. Not just the amount, it's better to have a higher frequency, lower amount than the same amount having, in one sitting. That's one thing that I learned recently. And the other thing would be the strains. So as you guys know, Pendulum has sponsored previous videos and we've worked with them. I do like their product. Akkermansia muciniphila is a strain that they actually have the patent to include in their probiotics. It's been studied for, I think, a decade or two, and there's hundreds or thousands of studies about this strain, but you can't get it from food and you can't get it from any other probiotic. So the reason it's so good and the reason that I like taking this probiotic is that it actually helps to improve the strength of the gut lining, and it's been largely considered a key strain for gut health. You see that it's actually abundant in those adult individuals who have better metabolic health, who have diverse microbiomes, and you'll see it in much lower levels in those who have metabolic health issues. And then they have another probiotic, which I'm also taking on the trip, called Metabolic Daily, which includes Akkermansia plus some other strains. And this one further improves your digestion of carbohydrates and helps to reduce things like sugar cravings and energy slumps and things like that. And some would say that you shouldn't have to use probiotics, but the way I see it is that you're just supplementing. I still have a lot of fiber, prebiotic foods, the foods that the bacteria are going to use to propagate, especially the good ones in the gut. So when I go to these breakfast buffets, I'll first have a lot of cooked veggies, I'll have my eggs, and I'll have yogurt, which is probiotic, throughout the day with breakfast and dinner, and sometimes lunch too. But you're just supplementing to that and making sure you get more of the good stuff. And things like, there are strains like Akkermansia, which are very beneficial, but if you can't get it from food, you're gonna have to supplement it in pill form. Some other tips and tricks, I love these Peak Design packing cubes. I've had them for like 6-7 years, and one of them broke before my India trip. I messaged them, and within a week or two, I had a new replacement free of charge. They have a lifetime warranty, so really happy with those. The 2 key things is that they have a dirty clothes pocket, so you can separate, and within the same packing cube, you're clean versus dirty clothes. And they also have, it's a compressible, so you can fill a lot of stuff in there and then use the compression zip to cinch it all down, squeeze out all the air. So that's been very practical. My mom saw them and she wants them too, so I'm gonna buy her some when I get back. And then traveling in India, a lot of things are just, a lot of things are better in India, like the food and some aspects of the culture, but a lot of the logistical, organizational things are just a lot worse. Every plane we've been on so far has been delayed. A lot of issues with even just buying a ticket online. We went on an Indigo flight, and long story short, couldn't get the ticket even though you pay with your credit card, because they need to there's some steps that they do on their end to then give you the ticket. And then when you try to contact their customer support, it's like 3 hours on the phone, then they drop you, you're not even gonna talk to anyone. Very frustrating process. And that's kind of par for the course here. It's happened with a few other things too. And I think if you keep that in mind, remember, expectations really setting a lot of things here, then you'll probably be happier and less frustrated during your trip. Anyway, my friends, if you stuck around this long, thanks so much for watching. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you have questions that I didn't get to on this AMA, then I apologize. Try to get through as many as I could. Please do send them in the next time we do an AMA. I'll do my best to answer them. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in the next one.